Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere and welcome to our niche cast on Tuesday, the 28th of November. We're from the niche-case.com, where you can read about many of the things that we are discussing here today. We've got domestic cricket covered for damn sure. We've got Ford Trophy, we've got HBJ Shield, fresh yarns on our website. No National League thing just yet, but I imagine there'll be some National League Grand Final deep dives coming up on the website in the next couple of days.
I would say in the next couple of hours. I think the men's one will probably be up before the podcast. So, well, up before the audio podcast. Probably won't beat the video podcast, but it's the hot on the heels at least.
And of course, there's lots of rugby league coverage. You've got your basketball, your breakers thingy majig. I did chuckle
I
like you
finished it.
you had the last two basketball things we've got on the website are
Mm,
the like a positive breakers thing, and then right next to it
yeah,
is a negative thing, like how the breakers gone, started the season with optimism, things were all honky-dory. Midway through the season, it's a bit more stinky, as we have discussed on previous podcasts. Big up to everyone around Aotearoa, big up to Aotearoa, and of course, sport, life, everything is great. How about that? There's some mindfulness right there. Everything is great. Big up to the Patreon whānau and those supporting us with the paid Substack subscriptions. You can hit up either of those, patreon.com/our niche case, the nichecase.substack.com, and you can support the niche case straight up the guts directly. And we do dish out our subscriber podcast dispatch for members of the Patreon whānau and those with a paid Substack subscription. We're on X, Twitter, thingy-majig, we're on Instagram, Facebook, and if you could subscribe on YouTube right now, if you're watching this, that would be great as well. We do encourage you, if you do enjoy the content, make yourself heard, make yourself known, and if you're a negative Ned, you can do whatever you want as well. It's all good. We will start. Well, let's shout out that Monday, Friday newsletter via Substack, because that is completely free, and you get all our notes and nuggets, little bits and pieces from the niche case fresh into your email. You get the links to all the deep dives on our website as well, and all the podcast information, any other links you need. That's all part of the Monday and Friday newsletter via Substack. And we write paragraphs for each dispatch. Yesterday, I offered some HBJ Shield thoughts. Also looked into the Warriors forward pack depth with the report that they might be signing Kurt Capewell. So there's also All Whites debrief thoughts, lots of football, lots of Aotearoa sporting matters to be found. I did enjoy that thing you had about the All Whites coaching, because you had Darren Baisley and Simon Elliott and then some other geezer. And that other geezer
yeah,
is a geezer. He's a proper geezer. But he's also got some roots that run deep with Aotearoa football as well.
yeah. Dan Robinson was the fella. I remember seeing that during the game, like looking at it, because I'd take a note. I mentioned it on the podcast. I wrote about it on the thing. I take a note of the relationship between Simon Elliott and Darren Baisley seems to be kind of very strong, especially in the sort of tactical in-game kind of way. But then I saw those two and I'm like, wait, who's that other dude next to him? Because that's not Tony Reddings. And then I saw Tony Reddings somewhere else, sitting further down the bench. I'm like, okay, so who's the other fella there? Didn't recognize him, but from looking it up, I found out that is Dan Robinson, who used to be goalkeeper for Waitakere United back when they were winning former National League. Back then, it was like the NZ Premiership. Back when they were winning titles back then. So I didn't look that up this closely, but I would imagine he probably played with Darren Baisley at the tail end of Darren Baisley's career for that team. I don't know if that's how he got hooked up, because he also worked as a goalkeeping coach for the Football Ferns for a wee while, which would have been under Tony Reddings, come to think of it. So yeah, he would have had some relatively strong connections with a couple of those coaches there, and he is currently the academy coaching director or whatever, the director of the academy, the academy coach, whatever the role is defined as, for Peterborough United, who are in League One, which is the same level that Max Crocombe plays at, Max Mata plays at, and Tyler Binden plays at. So there you go. Weird little mystery that I solved with a surprisingly interesting answer yesterday.
So you do get the facts, the figures, the what happened in Aotearoa sport over the weekend, as well as the miscellaneous funky bits and bobs that we do highlight as well in our Monday and Friday newsletter. Let's get a bit of mindfulness.
Yeah, right then. You want the Latin mindfulness or the English mindfulness? It's written in both here.
I only speak Cuzzy, so maybe no Latin.
Yeah, we'll skip the Latin because I don't actually think I could pronounce it anyway. But this is from Virgil's Georgics. Vice thrives and lives by concealment. I think lives and thrives sounds better. Vice lives and thrives by concealment. Here I am translating Virgil in real time here. Vice lives and thrives by concealment. The stuff you're ashamed of is the stuff you hide. And because you hide it, you keep doing it because no one else is there to call you out for it, right?
Seems about right. It is it does highlight the darkness, so it's a bit of a darker mindfulness, but
it's telling you to bring the darkness into the light, right?
And we're all about the light. We are the light bringers. Azor High, he is I am him. So slim with the tilted brim. As Snoop Dogg once said, referencing Game of Thrones there, a bit of a mix and match, but that's what we are here for. And I got to take a moment. The Michael Maguire, he's no longer Kiwis coach, and it's been a confusing old week or so, because midweek last week, there was a report from New Zealand Herald that Michael Maguire was going to stay as Kiwis coach. Then we recorded the podcast. However,
timing is everything.
soon after recording the podcast, I went looking for that link, and it was deleted. So the story about Michael Maguire remaining as Kiwis coach was deleted, and then suddenly there's stories on Fox Sports and out of Australia that he's no longer the Kiwis coach. So I went on this big rant on Thursday about Michael Maguire staying as Kiwis coach, and then suddenly he's not Kiwis coach, and I have to reassess my whole being. I'm sure there's a tie into vices and concealment, because there is some darkness in what I was feeling. Like, damn. Like, obviously it's got nothing to do with me, but like, damn, I missed the mark on that one. I went all in on this rant, and then it wasn't to be. Soon after, though, I did realize, like, who gives a shit? Michael Maguire chose to coach New South Wales over New Zealand, so suddenly the New Zealand Kiwis, New Zealand Rugby League, and myself, we've got a chip on our shoulder, because we're like, yo, Madge cuz, what are you doing, bro? You're choosing New South Wales over New Zealand Kiwis. It's a little bit of like, F ya. A little bit of get there. A little bit of on your bike, son. See you later. Don't want to talk to you no more. That was some dark feelings I had after that. And it is a fascinating situation. Like, I did write onwards and upwards for New Zealand Rugby League. That's on the website at the moment. And as I typed through it, I did kind of realize that Australians are confused about state of origin. Because there's some Australians who think it's still a trial for Australian Kangaroo selection. Some think it's open to everyone. Everyone can play state of origin. It's the best entertainment. It's the highest level of rugby league in the world. State of origin. It's the biggest selling thing, so we want all the best players. It seems like this might be a hot take. It's a bit of the fact that I think New Zealand Rugby League is better than Australia is also a hot take, but I did kind of figure out that maybe Aussies don't really know what state of origin is, because it's definitely not an Australian trial, but they haven't gone all in on opening it up for everyone who is quasi-eligible. So it is a bit weird. I have talked a lot about the blatant conflict of interest that no one else was talking about. Like, Michael Maguire was literally kind of weakening the Queensland squad while coaching New Zealand Kiwis. Not the Queensland squad, the Queensland talent pool as coach of the Kiwis and possible coach in New South Wales. So I do understand, like, it's like a lot of people are upset at the New Zealand Rugby League board for saying that you can't do both jobs. I think doing both jobs is a bit ridiculous. Like, let's be honest. So then it's a choice, and he chose New South Wales over the Kiwis, and that's his choice. But now we learn whether it was Michael Maguire or whether it was the players, whether it's New Zealand Rugby League that was actually good, because it can be spun that Michael Maguire worked wonders with New Zealand Kiwis. But being deep in the mangroves of New Zealand Rugby League, the Kiwi Ferns defeated Australia. The NRLW players from New Zealand were dominating Australian teams and players. I referenced all these little notes and nuggets. St. Thomas of Canterbury winning the National Schoolboys competition. You got two lads from the Deep South signing NRL deals, Carius Booth and Torino Jackson. I think one of them's from Balclutha. So there's rugby league talent coming from the Deep South nowadays. All these things are happening that help the Kiwis defeat Australia. So my intuition, my perception is that the Kiwis and Kiwi Ferns are successful because New Zealand Rugby League is in a fantastic state. Michael Maguire was part of it, but I don't think he was the reason. Like, Michael Maguire is not the reason why Māori Rugby League is dominating Aotearoa. Michael Maguire is not the reason why the cultural tournaments, the cultural teams are so, they are thriving in New Zealand. Like, rugby league is the cultural sport of Aotearoa. And you only need to look at the status of the Māori tournaments, how many NRL teams recruit from Māori tournaments. It's all there. Like, Michael Maguire didn't do that. Michael Maguire didn't develop rugby league in the South Island because there's so many players coming from the South Island now. Like, that's not Michael Maguire. So I think we're at an interesting time where we may or may not see whether it was Michael Maguire as coach or whether it's just the state of New Zealand Rugby League. And obviously, being deep in these mangroves, I believe it's the state of rugby league that has propelled the Kiwis to this point. And again, most importantly, at the same time that the Kiwi Ferns are at the same level, because they also defeated Australia. They've also got fantastic talent. And at this point, I haven't even mentioned the Warriors. So the Warriors, they're going to have so many junior teams. They've had a good season and returned to Aotearoa this year. Safe to say, rugby league is in a fantastic position in Aotearoa. Michael Maguire played a small role, and now he's gone. So we'll see what the real standing and mana of rugby league is in Aotearoa.
Yeah, I'm remembering as you say this, there was a bit on one of the TV newses the other day that I just happened to pass through the room and catch the end of, which was the thing about specifically about like the developing talent in the South Island. And I think they might have talked to Griffin Neame at one point, but I remember they were also talking to some other fella who was highlighting what was basically the whole point of the news article, which was we got to get the Warriors interested in these guys because otherwise they're just going to go to Australian clubs. This is what they've been doing already. And I'm watching this thinking like, so do you think the Warriors can sign everyone? There's 16 other clubs. You want them to we just want Kiwi players at every team with 5 or 6 in every one of those starting 13s each week, like what's a big deal if someone goes to the Warriors or somewhere else? And the fact is, like, at this point, the Warriors can't contain that. Like, the Warriors can't be the be all and end all, and they're not. And the Kiwis are in a great place for that. And I'm thinking, like, when did the your Kiwi NRL takeover phrase? When would that have originated? Because it would have been pre-Maguire, surely.
2015, 2016, 2017-ish.
Yeah, so we're like at least 6 years into this clear trend of what's going on here, and that's that's not an all of a sudden thing. That's not a single coach coming in and fixing some things. That's a grand unstoppable kind of wave. That's not any single person's responsibility. Having said that, it's also true to be able to say that, like, Michael Maguire did a good job as Kiwis coach, and he leaves the team in a better place than he found them. And there are structures in place now that probably weren't there when he took over. And a lot of this stuff has been greatly improved. Does that mean that someone else can't come in and pick up where he left off? Of course not. But like, acknowledgement of a job well done, and then acceptance of the fact that coaches change in sports all the time. And if you're going to rely on one coach to be the be all and end all, then you're putting all your eggs in one basket. That's not going to last very long, especially if they do well. They're just going to get headhunted somewhere else anyway. And I remember he started off this job as the like doubling up with, I think, the Tigers, wasn't it? He was coaching the Tigers, and then he ends up coaching New South Wales, and he didn't get the New South Wales job on the back of his work with the Tigers. I'll say that. He's got the New South Wales job on the back of what he's done with the Kiwis pretty clearly. So like, job well done, but we move on because that's how professional sports always is and has to be. And someone else will step up and hopefully pick up with the same momentum that the Kiwis have finished on. There's no better time to take over as Kiwis head coach, is it, than after their biggest ever win against Australia? So I don't see why as long as they get a decent appointment in place. I don't know who they're sort of leaning on. I did see Nathan Kalis, his name being thrown out there. People always say Stacey Jones with this kind of stuff, but there doesn't have to be any slowing down of the train or any kind of speed bumps here. This can just be a straight on flow into the next phase of Kiwi Rugby League, which we do see a lot. There's a lot of examples around sports of a coach who sets the platform, then someone else takes the baton and runs it even further. And that's a common thread, and it's one that I don't know how you get better than beating Australia 30-0, but I guess the difference is, can you do it again? It's less about being better than that performance and more about repeating that performance. So we'll see how that goes, when the Kiwis next get to play International Rugby League, which might not be for another year.
Watch out for what is going to happen. This is what is going to happen. The Warriors are going to have an under-17 team, an under-19 team, an under-21 team, a New South Wales Cup team, an NRL team. And in the coming years, they will have an NRLW team. They may also have junior women's teams. Those things are going to happen. The men's pathways are happening for next year. The women's stuff will definitely happen in the coming years. All of that's going to happen. And Australian teams are still going to sign players from New Zealand. They're still going to sign young men. They're still going to sign young women. They're going to sign them from rugby union. They're going to sign them from rugby league. They're going to sign them from club tournaments, rep footy, first 15, Māori tournaments, cultural tournaments. The Warriors are going to be full, and every Australian team is going to keep signing good young talent from Aotearoa. That's how much talent there is in Aotearoa right now. That's what's going to happen. It's far beyond the Warriors. We did have a Mount Smart extravaganza, speaking of the Warriors. And that involved National League Grand Finals as well as a really exciting weekend of Wellington Phoenix footy. Bit of a situation. I imagine the National League stuff, was that on FIFA Plus?
It was on FIFA Plus.
Right, yeah. So I didn't watch the National League Grand Finals, and we do have, I think we're going to have to hit up the old interwebs to watch the Blackcaps, because the 3 now thingamajig only looks like a website situation at the moment, or the app, whatever you got. I just prefer watching sport on the telly, but that's all right.
Just got to get the old casting going. That's
yeah,
all.
of course. Yeah, I'm living in 1995, but it's all right. That is to say, I didn't watch the National League Grand Finals, but I know Wellington Olympic defeated Auckland City, and Auckland United defeated someone, but Auckland United are the women's champions. Who did they defeat?
They defeated Southern United.
Beauty. So how would you sum up those National League Grand Finals for the keen football fans and those who didn't observe it like me?
The summary would be, I mean, both games were 2-0 results, and I think you could say that both teams as well, or both results as well, both games had kind of similar vibes in that the team that sort of produced the most what would you call it? Like the sort of most professional, assured grand final kind of performance was the team that won. It was a little bit more. I expect it expressed itself in slightly different ways. The men's final was first, so we'll talk about the men's final first. That was Wellington Olympic, Auckland City. Wellington Olympic, normally the underdogs against Auckland City, only because everyone is normally the underdogs against Auckland City. But Olympic have definitely, over the last couple of years, emerged as the number one challengers. Played out a great grand final against them last year, which they lost. Arguably played better in that grand final than they did in this grand final. And I think two things are true that are the reasons why, in a slightly worse performance, they ended up winning versus when they lost last time. One is that Auckland City aren't as good this year as they were last year. They were better than I thought they might be for the final because they were able to bring back a few of their injured players. Gerard Garriga, I thought he might have been. I thought his injury looked relatively, not serious, but a relatively longish term for a short thing, like a month or two on the sideline kind of thing. When he went off a few weeks back, but he returned. He started a little bit rusty. He missed a couple big chances in the first half that he. If he'd been playing the last 3 or 4 weeks in a row and getting that rhythm, he might have been able to score. But they also had, I think, Liam Gilliam played off the bench. Ryan De Vries played off the bench, just a second appearance of the season, 10 games. And Emiliano Tade doesn't always play, but he came on and was their most dangerous player in the last sort of 10, 15 minutes. He was the reason they almost got back into it. He hit the post, I think. Adam Mitchell hit the post as well. Cam Harrison had a deflected shot onto the crossbar in the first half. So Auckland City ended up kind of, I won't say running the show, but they certainly had more chances. And they were looking a lot more like themselves than they were in the last couple of weeks when they've been under strength and losing a couple of games in a row at home, including to Wellington Olympic, although they were also resting a few players for that game. So it wasn't the best example of how this one was going to go. But City just couldn't put the ball away, and Wellington Olympic picked the perfect time to keep their first clean sheet of the National League. It was in the grand final against Auckland City. In a game where they weren't quite able to get the flow on they normally do, they still managed to score that crucial first goal. Caelan Gould tapping in, sort of stretching out to squeeze the ball past Connor Tracy from an absolutely sumptuous cross from Joel Stevens, who ended up getting the Player of the Day award for the grand final. The New Zealand football version of is it the Clive Churchill, the grand final MVP kind of award? So, which is named after Steve Sumner. So the Steve Sumner Trophy for the men went to Joel Stevens, and that was exactly who I would have picked. If it wasn't him, I might have gone Scott Basale, their goalkeeper. I thought he had an excellent game, pretty much flawless. And Justin Gully, Ben Mata, Jack Corley, those guys at the back for Olympic. The best they have defended all season. And that goes a long way towards winning a grand final. Their second goal was a runaway in the 95th minute. It was like the last seconds of the game. Auckland City had a free kick, whipped it into the box. It got cleared, and Jack Emery Sinclair runs away and scores from about 35 meters. Not even a chip, just passes it in from 35 meters. And the guy who was tracking back was Emiliano Tade, who had to make. He doesn't have that much in his legs at this point. He only tends to play little cameos off the bench for Auckland City. He sprinted back like 60 meters to get to the penalty area and just didn't have the legs to take one more step and reach out and block the ball or to slide and stop it going over the line. He had a couple chances to stop it. It just gently rolled in. But it didn't make a difference because at that point, the game was over anyway. So Wellington Olympic winning largely because of their defense, which has been the opposite of them all season. They scored 10 goals more than anyone else during the 9-week regular season. They were just by far the best attacking team. Sinclair's late goal kept up a trend of having scored multiple times in every single game throughout these 10. They won it in a different way to how they normally win. But I think the experience of having played in a grand final last year and understanding that, like, it just, it's to win a grand final, you can't make mistakes. You have to be clinical. You have to take a chance here or there, but you also can't get in your own way. And I think that's what held up Southern United. in the women's one is they were so good. They didn't play like underdogs at all throughout the season. They lost 1-0 to Eastern Suburbs in the first game, but that actually seemed to give them confidence, only just losing to the defending champs. It was a banger of a goal from Charlotte Wilford Carroll, if I remember correctly, as well. So took something to beat them. They didn't lose again. Their only other game that they didn't win after that was against Auckland United when they drew 1-1 about a month ago. But come the grand final, it's the margins are so slim, and it's like walking a tightrope. You make one error and that could be the game, especially when you have the two best defensive teams in the competition meeting in the final. And Southern made a mistake coming out from their own goal line. I think building from, it might have been a goal kick, and Rene Wasi presses up, steals the ball on the edge of the area, squares it to Alexis Cook, who slams it home 1-0 after 24 minutes. They then conceded a bit of a scrambly one where Maisie Jules, a nice finish, sort of kind of lobbing the keeper from the edge of the area from just the keeper had come out and punched a corner kick or a free kick or something like that. Can't remember exactly, but it just sort of fell to her on the edge of the box and she just lobs it over and nice finish, 2-0. But Southern probably had more of the chances. Amy Hislop was real involved. She was unlucky on a few occasions, hit the crossbar early on. Other times it was maybe she was trying to do a bit too much, or just a lot of the pressure was falling upon her shoulders. And Southern just, they weren't as assured as they normally are. I think the big pitch didn't help, especially because if you're gonna, they're not necessarily, well, they are a team that likes to stretch things out, but they're not necessarily a team like their midfield. A lot of it comes from how hard their midfield works, pressing and winning the ball. And here they were sort of 2 against 3 in the midfield, and on a bigger pitch, more room to cover. I think that stopped them from being able to put the squeeze on, put the clamps on like they ordinarily would. But ultimately, it just came down to the fact that they made a mistake and let Auckland United take the lead. And Auckland United did not give up that lead under any circumstances. They just weren't going to do it. They defended too well. They've barely conceded a goal for the last few weeks. Things like 3 goals in the last 6 games they've allowed. Kept another clean sheet here. They were excellent. Renee Wasi got the Player of the Day award for the women's final. I don't know why. She was involved in the most important moment in winning the ball and setting up the goal. I don't know if she did a heap else. It just wasn't a game that was there for the attackers, really. I would have probably given it to Amy Hall, the goalkeeper for Auckland United. Thought she was brilliant once again. But yeah, they say defense wins championships, and a couple clean sheets. That's what got it done, because the team that created the more chances in each of these 2 finals was not the team that won each of these 2 finals.
Speaking of good defense and good goalkeeping, the Wellington Phoenix men have a pretty good goalkeeper, Alex Paulson, with another penalty save in the Phoenix's win. I believe that was over Melbourne City, and we also had a win for the woman. Who was that played between Perth Glory and Wellington Phoenix? Obviously, I remember your Grace Jale note. So the Wellington Phoenix men are second. Wellington Phoenix women are third. That penalty for the men, just like Alex Paulson at the moment, you're not afraid of pens. Like usually when you concede a penalty, you're like, oh shit, we're going down a goal here, or it's gonna go back to 1-1. Either way, you're conceding a goal. But when you got Alex Paulson in the net, you don't have that feeling. And to be honest, it's a feeling that goes throughout that Wellington Phoenix team, because any kind of little chance that the opposition may have at the moment, at least, and especially against Melbourne City, it's like, well, someone's going to block the shot, or someone's going to work their backside off to get in a good position to snuff out the opportunity. So I think the Wellington Phoenix men have really good defense. You'll be able to inform me more about the women, if they have a good defense or not, whatever. But the Paulson is he's the obvious guy right now for the Wellington Phoenix. There was a bit of Oscar Zavada chat. Obviously, he's a key goal scorer for the Phoenix, and I was like, how are the Wellington Phoenix going to play without Oscar Zavada? Oh my gosh, he's injured. What's going to happen? There's 2. I'd give an honourable mention to T-Pain, because it was consistently mentioned his big effort in returning from all whites duty, and the shift he put in for the Phoenix was epic. bursting up and down that right flank, getting deep into attacking positions and doing his job defensively. So I want to shout out T-Pain, but there's also this guy, Lucas Kelly-Heald, who is like, he's a freak show. All due respect to Kelly-Heald, but he's a freak show. It's like people should be watching the Wellington Phoenix just to see a 2 meter tall left back. Now, of course, when you've got a 2 meter tall left back, you might have a heavy touch here or there, or just he might be a little slow to get off the mark, to chase a ball going to the sideline and what have you. Like, he is almost 2 meters tall and he's really young and he's still adapting, but it's a bit of the just, he's a freak. And you gotta watch him. And I think Lucas Kelly-Heald right now, whether it's because you don't know if Alex Paulson's going to save a penalty every game. He also saved that free kick. So you know that Alex Paulson right now, he's worth you watching the Phoenix because he's going to do some crazy stuff in the goal. But Lucas Kelly-Heald, he is the freak show that I think folks should be tuning into. And I think Alex Rufer was the best player on the field. And the work he's doing in midfield, if you got the ball near him, he's taking the ball off you. If you're putting pressure on like one of his receives, he's rolling this way, he's rolling that way, and he's going to make a pass. Like, Rufer in the middle is often the best player on the field, I believe. He's really important in that defense. So is Kelly-Heald, because he's 2 meters tall. He's a good defender. He's good in the air. He's a robust tackler. He's in good positions. But Rufer in the middle, he's always there supporting the defensive line. He's always there to take the ball off the opponent. He doesn't lose the ball very often, especially because the Phoenix, as we're learning, they do the play out from the back thing. So there is that, like, the same with the penalties. You're like, oh crap, they conceded a penalty. Like, what's going to happen here? Anytime Paulson gets a bad pass from his teammates or whatever, you're like, oh crap, what's going to happen here? Nothing. Just he makes a pass, they make a pass, they make a pass, and they're in space and they're scoring a goal. There's like those two like undercover things. You've got the freak show and Lucas Kelly-Heald at left back, but you also have Rufer just being so classy in the midfield. And I love his passing. I love how he is the fulcrum of the team. The ball always goes back to him. He wins the ball. Like, any kind of Phoenix passage involves Rufer with some sort of classy touch.
I am glad you said that, because I wrote in I did some Wellington Phoenix notes in the email last night, and one of them was how I think Alex Rufer has been the most underrated presence in this Wellington Phoenix kind of I don't know, revival, resurgence. So you can't really call it a revival because they've actually never had 11 points after 5 games before. Like, you can't. It's not a revival if you're doing it for the first time. This is just the best start to a season they've ever had. Incredibly, when we thought it was potentially going to be bordering on one of the worst starts they've ever had when you look at the recruitment that they did. But the reason that's been the case is because, well, it turns out Alex Paulson's just better than Ollie Sale. Like, he's just ready to roll. He's the youngest goalkeeper who has started a game this season in the A-League. And he might be the best. I mean, if he's not the best, he's got the 3rd best save percentage. He's conceded the 2nd fewest goals of those who have played in every game. We'll say his team has conceded the 2nd fewest goals, only 4 goals in 5 games, 2 clean sheets. He saved 2 penalties. There's only been 1 other penalty save all season. And I think that was Joe Gauchis for Adelaide, who is not a New Zealander, but did apparently spend some time living on Waiheke Island as a young teenager. So there's a connection. I don't think he would have been eligible. Plus, he's in the Aussie setup already anyway, so it doesn't matter. He's very good. So if Alex Paulson has taken his lead, no dramas there. And I remember when Paulson signed a new contract at the start of the season and trying to say, like, yeah, it's cool, but let's be careful about the language we use about this, with the whole, like, to keep it, like, Paulson signs a new 4-year deal to keep him in town until 2027. I'm like, he's not going to be in town in 2027. This is a contract that is there to protect his on-sale value. Now, I thought that would happen 2 or 3 years time down the line, Now I'm thinking maybe they might want to at least have some ideas about what they might want to do for a new goalkeeper next year because he's he's been that good so far. Just living up to all the expectations that people had for him, myself included, watching him come through the academy because he's been. This is not a dude who's come out of the blue. This is a guy who has been the best goalkeeping prospect domestically of his age group throughout, like from 17s on upwards. Um, if they do need a new goalkeeper next year, Lucas Kelly Hield's twin brother Albie is a goalkeeper. I will mention that, and same size, so same size, same build. So goalkeeper is probably more what you'd expect from someone roughly 2 meters tall and that sort of lankiness, but rather than a ball playing fullback like Lucas. I just got to make sure I get the names right. LB, he played every game for the Wellington Phoenix reserves during the National League, and I thought was really good. So I'm not just saying this as like, well, he's related to, he's the twin of the left back. I'm saying that this is a genuine goalkeeping prospect as well coming through the ranks beneath Paulson. So there's more where this came from. And he has been on the bench once, I think, for 2 games when Jack Duncan was sick. So he is the third string goalkeeper this season. They've kind of established that. But back to Alex Rufer, I think he's been absolutely brilliant for them this season in every single game. And I agree. I thought he was the best player on the field against Melbourne City. I thought he was the key to that victory in a way. And he's doing similar things to what he did last year, but it just feels like under Talai, the style of play was quite not necessarily meant to be this, but I think when it didn't click, it became quite rigid and kind of robotic and just very functional touch pass, like 90-degree turns and everything very kind of structured. Where under Italiano, it's been a lot more. There's a fluidity there. There is an extra midfielder, so that probably helps. And so Rufer's got a slightly different role, a bit more just like sweeping in front of the back four. But it feels like more angles are open up to him. Like it feels like he's playing in little half spaces a lot more, where before that would just be a pass back to the fullback or to the centre back, and here he's willing to let's slip one around the corner to a midfielder because I know he's there, and they trust themselves to make those passes to a guy who has someone on their back and saying like, well, okay, you're facing your own goal. There's a guy pressing up behind you, but I trust your touch. I'm going to play it to you because I know you know what to do with it. Then you're either going to spin through the pressure or you're going to lay it off to someone else. And then maybe that creates space. If this guy is following you, you lay it off to someone else who can run past into the space, vacated. And they do a lot of that kind of stuff, which you notice. And it's just, I don't know they've been that brave before at trying to do that stuff. And I think Alex Rufer's transformation, because he's not necessarily the best at doing that stuff, but it's the way in which he's been able to adapt to that, playing with that bit more fluidity on top of also being an absolute nugget, just winning tackle after tackle after tackle, which is the stuff he's always been doing. But I do think he's got better at it. Like I think he's more comfortable and more confident, and he's not committing as many fouls as he would in the past. And that's not necessarily like a CDM's allowed to give away some free kicks. That's fine. You'd rather give away a free kick than let a guy run past you and be free, facing up on your defense. That's fine. But also better still is to win the tackle or take possession and then transition into an attack of your own. And Rufer's leading that show right now for the Wellington Phoenix. And I do think that is a very underrated presence of how they've been able to be as successful as they are this season, with and without the ball.
Beauty. The Wellington Phoenix, the Wellington Phoenix woman also had a win, and it's really obvious to see how the small ball shtick is in play. And I think you can see a similar thing with the Wellington Phoenix men, where a lot of times they just like touch the ball into space, and you kind of set it there like playing the ball and someone's right up their backside. A lot of those situations, the ball is just played into space, but the Phoenix player is always able to react quicker because that's their system. So you can like, it just feels good watching the Wellington Phoenix men in action, knowing that, okay, this pass is straight away going to lead into another pass, often into space, so that person's got a bit of flow, bit of momentum, and then just happens again and again, and suddenly they're down the other end of the field. I imagine the systems are different, but the woman, it's a similar concept because it's small ball, so it's small passing, so you're always looking for your next little connection to make with your teammate. And I am enjoying how the Wellington Phoenix women do have that clear playing style. I believe they actually went down to Perth in the first half, was it? No.
They were, yeah, they were losing 1-0 at halftime.
So it's a bit of a different look for the women coming back into the game. They didn't necessarily dominate the whole game. But they were still creating chances. They didn't have to only concede one goal. Was there something you learned from this game, considering that the Wellington Phoenix women are in a nice little groove? Not quite as groovy as the men just yet because they're not second on the ladder, but
They're not second, they're third, so
yeah.
not quite, but we're getting there.
I was going to say they do have more points, but they've played an extra game, so that doesn't.
They have played an extra game. That's why. Yeah.
What did you learn from this outing for the Wellington Phoenix women?
Well, I'm just checking their results because against Western, they were 2-0 up. They were 3-0 up actually at one point. Against Brisbane, they won and they were 2-0 up. Against Western Sydney, they won 3-0, so no need to check there. So yeah, this was the first time, and they've got two 1-0 losses this season. The two times they've been beaten was when they were beaten 1-0. Home against Melbourne City in week 1 and away to Central Coast last week. So this was the first time, it was the third game in which they've gone behind, but it's the first time in which they've gone behind and come back and won. So the other times they'd conceded the first goal, nothing else had changed. They'd lost 1-0. This time, goal pretty much, I mean, they were losing for about 20 minutes in the first half, but they also felt like they were the team creating a lot more. And certainly with the second half response was fantastic because they came out and scored straight away. Perth tried to respond. They repelled that. And then they had a really good spell around the time that they scored the second goal to go into the lead. Like there's quite a dominant stretch for them at that point, and they capitalize. It's what you want to do. Like you make those halftime adjustments. You capitalize when you're on top. You like timely goals, and they were able to battle it out against Perth the rest of the way. I think Perth finished all right, but it felt like there were always sketchy moments there. But it wasn't as sketchy as it was for the Phoenix men hanging on at 1-0 in their game. So I think it was sort of like maybe Perth tired a little bit from the travel. But that's a good Perth side. They pretty much shut Grace Jale down. I think Perth also had an injury, didn't they, at centre back because Liz Anton moved into centre back, and they might have even finished in a back three. I'm trying to recall. I've watched too much football over the weekend. Like Perth did. What I'm saying is Perth did stuff. Perth had weapons. Perth are an informed team. I don't know if they're not still top of the table, are they? They're still second though. They're still a point ahead of Wellington, and this was their first defeat. And the Knicks had to come from behind to do it. The Knicks had to sort of to battle away, hanging on at the end. They did those things. Like this is a trait of a team that is learning and arguably has learned how to win games of football. Which again, like the same theme so many times with each of the. It's like this. This is not what they did last year or the year before. This is not how they even when they played well, they wouldn't be able to capitalize on those moments. They wouldn't be able to score those timely goals. They wouldn't be able to prevent not conceding those timely goals. Like just the moments would go ahead of them and would get away from them. And that's a trait of a losing team, basically. They don't have that trait anymore. And there's been a couple games where it hasn't all clicked. That's going to happen. They're not out there. We're not out there saying like this is championship contender material quite yet, but we'll see how it goes. I certainly think if they don't make the playoffs from here, something shocking has happened because they are one of the best teams. Talked about one of the better teams, talked about how the next blokes had to go without Oscar Zavada. Well, the women had to do it without Macy Fraser in this game, and I think that's a bigger it's not a bigger impact than the men not having Zavada, but it is a bigger impact than you would have thought at the start of the season with Fraser just having been elevated from academy team into first team. You realize how important she's become, but they they passed these tests. They've just been ticking off boxes all season. They've been passing these tests as they come along. Not every single one of them, like it would have been nice to get something out of that Central Coast game when they were in similar, like they had similar phases, which they didn't capitalize on in that one, but also they responded. They came back home and they beat a very good team. Dealt Perth their first loss of the season. Like there's just another one of these tests that they've passed, and they're passing a lot more than they don't right now. So um, yeah, it's genuinely funky to think about. Like how do we get from there to here so quickly? And it's with both of these teams because the Phoenix men seem to be bottoming out with their recruitment, but it turns out now actually just these academy guys and this coach are good enough. Like it's fine. They don't need to sign A-League veterans. The youngsters are coming in and doing a job. Um, Matt Sheridan got a debut for the Blokes off the bench late in that game, so he's another one. Been sort of midfielder, right back for the reserves team the last couple of years. There will be more where that came from. The women are now. I mentioned the men have their highest ever points tally after this many games. The women are 1 point away from equaling their highest ever points tally in a season. Like last year, I think the first year they got 7 points. Last year they got 13 points. Now they've got 12 points from 6 games. They're a quarter of the way through the season, something like that, just a little bit over, I think. I think next game, I don't know, something like that. They're going to shatter that record, like to go from where they were to where they are right now. And it gets me thinking about that Breakers thing. Breakers note earlier how they went from being the worst team in the NBL to the second best team in the NBL. Now they might be the second worst team again, like from the ups and the downs. I think the Wellington Phoenix look a little bit more stable in both of these counts, both of these teams. They don't feel like they're going to go back to where they came from in a hurry. I guess the men have had a few years under Talay of being quite a sort of consistent, there or thereabouts kind of fringe playoff team. But the women have come from wooden spoon to be contending for playoffs. And the way that team's set up, it feels like players could go to Europe and they will have others who can come in and replenish the stocks like the men have been doing. This feels like a consistent thing. Whereas, of course, the Breakers don't really they have some Kiwi development players, but they don't develop them. There's nothing replenishing the stocks there. So they just live or die over what their imports do. And right now, one of their imports is injured. And so that doesn't help them very much. But good vibes from the Wellington Phoenix. And I think as we've established over the last several months, Warriors are very much more on the Phoenix side of that spectrum than the Breakers side of that spectrum as well. So poor old Breakers are just kind of on their own there.
I do feel like a new young, specifically in the men, I'm learning about a new academy player every week because they come off the bench. And I do think, similar to what I was saying about the All Whites and the football ferns, you just keep drip feeding the youngsters over the course of the season, over the course of a campaign. Suddenly they've got 10 games, 20 games, and they're just like ready to do a job for the team. And you did reference the Warriors. That's what the Warriors are going to do next season. Don't worry about like needing another forward, needing another prop. They are signing Kirk Capewell, but I don't think that changes anything because the youngsters are still going to be the players who play 10 minutes off the bench. 15 minutes off the bench. That's all they need to do. That's all the Wellington Phoenix Academy players are doing. Like they just get some game time at the back end of a game and they still need to perform to help their team get a win, to get a draw, a positive result. But you just give them the opportunity. And each time they do that opportunity, it compounds on top of each other. Let's get into a bit of Blackcaps here. The Blackcaps start their test series against Bangladesh, and we do have a lot of domestic cricket happening. I was thinking when you're saying how the Wellington Phoenix women are going to have more points already this season than they've had in complete seasons prior, I did think about Georgia Plymouth because she scored 147 in the HBJ Shield this weekend, and I think that's her first score over 50.
Well, she cashed in.
So she's already blown away like her whole career's work with one knock. So shout out to her. Lots of HBJ Shield notes on our website, thenews-case.com. Some other stuff might pop up in this conversation as we do explore Blackcaps versus Bangladesh starting tonight. World Test Championship, first game of that cycle. And it's a very interesting test series. Like, don't let the low-key nature of this test series fool you. This is a very interesting series because it starts the World Test Championship cycle. The Blackcaps genuinely have some of the best test batting averages this country's ever produced. Guys like Kane Williamson, Devon Conway, Daryl Mitchell, and even Tom Latham's among some of the best test averages from New Zealand as well. So, like, really
Definitely
good,
when you compare him to other openers, he is for sure.
yeah. So really good batters, but you've also got a really good spin attack. You've got Mitchell Santner, Ajaz Patel, Ish Sodhi, Rachin Ravindra, and there, Glenn Phillips is now an all-rounder. So he's going to be doing some things if he is selected in the first 11. And another interesting factor is what happened in Pakistan late last year, or I think the series was overlapping the 2022-2023 New Year's window. But the Blackcaps drew that series in Pakistan. They didn't win that series, but they drew that series. And those back-to-back positive results in Pakistan haven't happened a lot recently because they haven't played a lot of cricket in Pakistan recently, but also throughout history. Obviously, if you're touring Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, these countries, it is very difficult to get a series win, let alone a series draw. And the Blackcaps fought pretty hard to get a series draw. I think they were close to even winning one of those games. So lost in the home summer last summer. You know, when the Blackcaps lost to England, oh my God, Bazball, that is all right. And a lot of the negativity around Blackcaps Test cricket last summer, people seem to just completely ignore the fact that they had a really positive series in Pakistan where spin was a major factor. I think this Test team is better than the team that toured Pakistan last year. Because you've got better spinners. I think the batters are better now, and you've got a little bit of flavour there with Phillips and Ravindra. You're probably listening to this by the time this series has started, so I am curious though about your first 11 thoughts. Obviously, people may already know the first 11 for this game. It seems like Henry Nicholls is going to play. Like, I think he's played every test over the past year, so it would be a bit crazy to drop Henry Nicholls. He has, of course, scored a century in like 7 consecutive years of test cricket, including this year. So he seems like a likely candidate to be in the team, but I think there's a possibility where you can get Phillips and Ravindra into the first 11. I think there's a possibility you can get Sodhi, Patel, Santner, and Ravindra into the same first 11. Just depends on what's happening with the batting lineup and also whether you play Southey and or Wagner Jamieson. Oh, sorry, Southey. Yeah, and or Wagner Jamieson. I don't know what I'm saying. It's basically one seamer and 4 spinners, or 2 seamers and 3 spinners. Ravindra's a good batter, so he's quite useful. I think Santner's a good all-rounder cricketer, so he is quite useful. Sodhi was great in that series against Pakistan. Ajaz Patel has been all right since the Mumbai Magic. Not necessarily dominant, but he's been okay. What are your feelings about the first 11 for the Blackcaps versus Bangladesh, which will be in Sylhet?
Yeah. At the risk of sounding like an absolute knobber by getting things wrong when people are listening to this after they know the answer, I think, well, we know the opening pair will be Latham and Conway, and I think that frees up a lot of room for them to have it frees up some wiggle room with the batting order. In which case, obviously, Williamson at 3. I would like to see Glenn Phillips in there for a variety of reasons. All of them just to do with the fact that he's G Philly and you want to see him play cricket as often as possible. But also, he's one of those guys who's played. He's a one test wonder at this point. He did score a 50 on debut. I think he might have got a 50 in a duck against Australia. I can't remember, but he definitely got a 50. But his average is in the 20s or something like that. So
That's
I think
a
he's someone who's
that
worth a
series
go.
against Australia. Sorry for interrupting. It's a bit of a
Yeah,
graveyard because Lockie
it really is.
Ferguson played his first and last test.
His one session of Test cricket.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then Phillips was a late call up. There was a lot of
It was
weird
Will
stuff.
Somerville's last time, wasn't it? I think. No, Todd Astle. It was Todd Astle's last one. He got called up and then played and then retired. Will Somerville hung around for a little bit longer. Um, was there anyone? I don't think there was anyone else, but I think that was early Daryl Mitchell. I think
Yeah,
one
him
or
and
two other guys who have
Blundell.
actually stuck.
Blundell was the man
Blundell
in
was
that series,
opening.
but like there was that news that Australia's booked in New Zealand for a 4-test series in Australia, and I was like, well, is that what we really want? Because last time we went to
We struggled with it
Australia, we
last
could
time.
barely string together a team because they kept getting injured and breaking down, and it was a bit of a graveyard. So how will 4-test look of like 3 players being, yeah, it's just a weird series. But back to Bangladesh.
Well, I do like the idea of just getting at least one four test series in the careers of these dudes because I don't think the Black Caps have had a four test series since like the 1970s or something. It never happens. Basically, if you look at the four test series, it's almost entirely series between Australia, England, South Africa, and India. And if you look at 5 test series, you can scratch South Africa from that list. Basically, that's how it goes. Only the rich countries get to play that much. Having said that, five
But
tests is too much.
yeah, like
Like,
that's ridiculous. Like, there's no need to play 5 tests in a series, and I still think New Zealand cricket's got pretty well with a bit of scarcity in their test cricket. And considering the workloads on these cricketers or the tournaments, everything else that everyone wants to have an anxiety attack about the state of international cricket, maybe just play more 2-test series. Maybe be extravagant with the 3-test series and or a 4-test series. Like, it's test cricket. It's over 5 days. We're in 2023. It does seem ridiculous that people are going to sit around for 5 tests.
it is. It is ridiculous. Like every Ashes series drags, every single one of them. And that's the best of it. Like there's nothing gets more hype than that. So if that's the case, then obviously just regular bilateral series is gonna be a struggle. I like the occasional idea of a 4 test series as like something like this, as like a beacon every couple of years. But 3 tests is the sweet spot. Like that gives you a chance to lose the first test, but still be able to win the series, which a 2 test series doesn't. But it doesn't, it doesn't get it doesn't drag on in the same way as those other ones do. 3 tests is the sweet spot. We don't play enough of that. Nice to get one 4 test series, but 3 is where I'd like to see them stick around a bit more often. Sodhi not only had a really good series in Pakistan, he also took his best ever ODI bowling figures in Bangladesh recently. Then didn't play hardly at all at the World Cup, but that's all a bit of horses for courses stuff. I would like to see him play. I wouldn't be surprised if they err on the side of Phillips doesn't quite make the cut. Sodhi doesn't quite make the cut. Probably, well, you'd assume Wagner is the pacer who misses out since he wasn't even in the initial squad. But I don't know, maybe the left-hander thing changes something. I'm not sure. Or maybe Jamieson was there to be the third choice and they actually just wanted Southey and Henry, but now that Henry's not there, they might prefer the workhorsey nature of Wagner over Jamieson. I don't know, but we'll see how that goes because I suspect that's how you do it. You pick 2 seamers and then 3 spinners, probably with a seaming all rounder, and maybe Daryl Mitchell can give you some change of end over type stuff if you really need it. I will. Well, I almost don't want to speculate. I almost just want to say I'll be very curious to see how they balance that because you could pick Sodhi, Santner, and Patel. You could do that because Santner can bat in the top 7. You could drop one of those three and have Ravindra in there as one of those options as well. You could probably pick all four because Ravindra could bat top five if you really wanted. He could take, say, Henry Nicholls' spot, and then you can still have like a middle order of Nicholls, Blundell, Santner, Sodhi slash Southey, or whatever, or Jamison, depending on who's there. They have options. It's quite a funky test squad actually, because a lot of these guys are coming in from the World Cup. They're guys who are like Phillips and Ravindra who probably who have played Test cricket, but a little more established in the other formats, or a lot more established in the other formats in Phillips's case certainly. So it will be a funky one. The fact they did quite decently in that ODI series in Bangladesh suggests that I think a full strength test team, or as close to full strength as they have available to them right now, should do all right here. Like certainly a winnable series, and it is the start of a new Test Championship cycle. So big points on offer, and I'll like, look forward to seeing who scores all the runs and takes all the wickets.
It is in Bangladesh, so that works in Bangladesh's favor, but they certainly aren't like a boring story. Like these countries, like Sri Lanka's always a shambles, Pakistan's always a shambles. Bangladesh isn't far behind. Like there's not like a lot of their best players don't play because there's issues with the board and all this other crazy stuff. And I think the key point of what you're talking about with the Blackcaps was it's all about options, and they're all quality options. You're choosing between Santner, Patel, Sodhi, and there's a possibility you select all of them. So then you're like, whoa, who do we drop? Wagner, Jamison. Like this is a good squad, and there's options for various situations, various scenarios. Not to mention, as I said, basically the best concentration of New Zealand's greatest Test batters is right here, right now. This is a really good Blackcaps Test squad coming up against the Bangladesh team where, like, I know who Mushfiqur Rahim is. I've heard of Shanto before, and I think he's the skipper nowadays because all the other skippers have dramas. We know Mahidi Hassan Miraz, he's a little spinner. You've got Shuriful Islam, who I've seen before. It's not like this is Bangladesh's best Test team. They were all right at the World Cup. They weren't fantastic. This will be interesting because it is really hard to win in a place like Bangladesh. But then again, Bangladesh aren't firing on all cylinders, and it's a good Blackcaps Test team.
Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, I know. I'd have to look it up, but I don't think we've won a lot of Test series in Bangladesh recently. When they first started playing Test cricket, yes, but not so much more recently. And I'm pretty sure that was their first series win. The ODI stuff recently was their first ODI series win in Bangladesh for quite a while as well, like for a couple of tours. And yeah, Bangladesh don't have Taskin Ahmed or Ebadot Hussain bowling their quick stuff. Litson Das is apparently on paternity leave, and Shakib Al Hassan, I think, is injured, but also wants to go into politics now. So who knows? But they are not at their peak, and perhaps the fact this is coming straight after a World Cup might be a better thing for New Zealand than it is for Bangladesh.
Apparently, New Zealand has 3 wins and 3 draws in Bangladesh. So I'm not sure how that.
Okay, so we don't necessarily lose, but we don't necessarily win either.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works out for series, but they're undefeated in Bangladesh, which is pretty crazy. And they haven't played in Bangladesh since 2013 by the looks of it.
Right. Which would that have been? No, that couldn't have been. Because didn't Kane Williamson debut in Bangladesh?
No, I think it was.
That couldn't have been that series, though. That must have been the one before.
I read somewhere where it might have been Ish Sodhi's debut series.
Yes, actually, that is. I remember that. I remember him getting picked quite early to play a tour of Bangladesh. I think Williamson's debut series was the time before that. They must have gone to Bangladesh 3 or 4 years earlier. Um, so there's a little bit of history there as well for some of these dudes.
We'll see how that goes. Big up yourself. We'll be back on Thursday with another podcast. And of course, we've got the subscriber podcast coming up maybe on Thursday as well. So big up yourself. Love yourself. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Choo choo.